Put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to
Good
place.
morning, viewers. It is 7:41 a.m. and welcome back to the Tobago Updates Morning Show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. Just certainly want to join in extending birthday greetings, going out celebrating 100. And let me say thanks as well to Corey's out there, a very good friend out there. As would have been aptly described, he produced in terms of some good stock out there. Corey's being part of that. Certainly, thank you so much for providing us with the current and up-to-date information as we celebrate 100 indeed. All right, viewers, at this point, we head on into our interview segment this morning with former Assemblyman Regis Carruth. All right, joining us here on set this morning. Good morning to you, Mr. Carruth.
Morning, Julian, and morning to the viewing public.
All right.
Good morning.
So some of you may know him. Yes, it's the same Mr. Carruth, teacher out at a number of years out of Scarborough Secondary, linguist in that area most certainly. But this morning we ain't chatting about the languages. We're speaking to the politics, and let me shout out as well. Out there, probably tuned in and looking on. Also, former Assemblyman Mr. Cecil Carruth out there in the mix as well. Brothers, the mix-up may happen occasionally. Both Carruths coming out of the Assembly, but this morning we're chatting with Regis Carruth on set with us. As we look at the discussions this morning, I want to start off by getting a perspective from you. We're just over, about a year and some months into the operations of this current administration. Coming out of the Tobago House of Assembly, you would have served within that very first period within the Assembly. Then we saw a transition to a new governance for the last 20 plus years, and we're now seeing a new administration in place once again. Tell us, your general feel at this point as you see the, overall operations of this current administration.
Well, I would tell you that I think this present administration is trying its best, given the circumstances, okay? Mr. Farley, I think, is trying to keep the course in spite of what happened between him and the political leader of the PDP, so to speak. And I would give him all the kudos. As a young man coming into the politics, I would give him all the kudos as he tries to steer this present assembly on an even keel.
All right. Today in particular, the House meets, and it's usually, it takes place on the Tuesday. That's the fourth Tuesday monthly.
Yeah.
Today we have the discussions and rather the motion that is being brought forth by the minority leader, Kelvon Morris, which speaks to a motion of no confidence in the Secretary of Infrastructure. Before we get into the specifics of the motion, I want to touch on, is this something really new coming from the perspective of the minority bringing forward motions of no confidence within, whether it be in the Chief Secretary or other members in the majority side of the House over the time period and tenure of the Tobago House of Assembly?
I think, if my memory serves me correct, this may be the second time we have a motion of no confidence. I cannot remember exactly when that was, the first one was, but I think there was a motion of no confidence in some secretary or the chief sec sometime. Not this present chief sec, but the previous one.
All right. So this motion that is being brought forth today, what are your expectations?
Well, when I look at the structure of the motion, it alleges that there is corruption and bedrigging in the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries, and Urban Development, and that the Secretary knew and ought to have known about the allegations. And it goes on, it goes on to question the Secretary's suitability and competence and so on, okay? But my question is, to open with, is it now that these practices are taking place? If not, the mover of the motion, Mr. Morris, being a member of the previous assembly, was he aware of these practices in terms of corruption and bedrigging? And if so, did he raise an alarm? Now, if he promotes himself, in my estimation, to be an upright individual and a representative who is incensed with bedrigging and corruption, his voice should have been heard before. this administration is in office for only 1 year now. And if there is bed rigging and corruption in the assembly, in my estimation, those two allegations have not started just within the last year. It means that this has been happening for some time, and we did not hear his voice.
So we see the motion being brought in terms of, as you referred to, looking at allegations of bid rigging and corruption, also speaking to the fact that the secretary knew or ought to have known, and also similarly looking at the conduct in relation to the allegations raised. Can we therefore anticipate the presentation from the minority leader and perhaps the minority councillor as well? And I'm not certain, but perhaps also joining in might very well be the second minority factor. I'm not certain what to call or to refer to it as, but in terms of Watson Duke as political leader of the PDP no longer supporting the majority, would you say that without a doubt we would now have to look forward in today's debate to either one, two, or all three of these individuals bringing forward issues or concerns in an effort to support this motion, or is it likely to be only the minority leader speaking to the motion from that side of the House today?
Well, given, in my estimation again, given the antagonism that we see that has surfaced in the Assembly, I expect to hear the PNM as well as Mr. Watson Duke making allegations against the president or against the secretary, so to speak. I expect to, but you see, in terms of anticipation, these motions to me do not succeed, because remember, the ruling party has the majority.
Right, so I want you to walk us through that process. So we have the presentation, we have the debate back and forth. Walk us through, how is a motion like this successful or not successful in the House?
Well, when it comes to the voting, and I hope that, I mean to say, the move of the motion, he has to watch his credibility. If he does not come with the necessary data and information to back up this motion, one would start looking at him in a different light. And I'm really concerned about young people and seeing what is happening in our country. Now, he is an elected representative. And if he comes to the country, to the nation, with such a motion, he must have the necessary data, information to back up his motion. If not, one would start to look at him in a different light. You see?
When a motion is brought like this, as he rightfully said, the majority side still carries whether or not this will stand. And of course, it is very likely, one would almost say 99%, that the majority side will not support what is being called for. If you sit on the side of the minority leader, you may claim it as success still, even if it fails in the House, because you may say you get the opportunity to bring out information. If you sit on the majority side, you might say that the motion ultimately is nonsensical because you are not able to take it any further, bearing in mind. What's your perspective from that sense when the minority brings forward a motion of this nature?
Well, let me put it like this. The motion is against the Secretary for Infrastructure, Urban Development, and so on. And he has to come and disprove that what is alleged is not correct. He must do that, because we are looking forward with eager anticipation as to his defense. He must come forward with that.
So therefore, you're saying this is an opportunity based on the motion to be able to speak to the facts and highlight the works and the achievements coming out of the division?
Precisely, achievements, and he has to defend the allegations. The allegations must be defended to show that they are nonsensical, if the case might be. He must show that.
So in today's debate, we anticipate at least two key speakers. Is it commonplace, again, based on the setup of the House and for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, that in the same manner in which the allegations are made, coming from the minority leader by way of this motion, that the secretary himself, along with perhaps other colleagues, will have an opportunity to be able to respond directly in detail to these matters as you're highlighting?
Certainly, he must respond to the issues involved, because I mean, it's his character, his portfolio is under question, is under scrutiny, so to speak. So he has to respond in a positive way, you know, to dispel those arguments as put forward by the PNM, as the case might be.
Are you concerned any at all that this kind of motion coming forward will affect the credibility of this current administration in any negative way?
No, well, I'm saying if the secretary, you know, if he defends properly the allegations against him, certainly I can't see it affecting. It would affect, to me, the opposition, right? Because you can't come to the nation and make certain allegations against a person in office, a secretary in office, and then, you know, they can't stand the scrutiny. They cannot stand up to scrutiny. There must be sound allegations, and the secretary involved must retort in a positive way.
Based on the divisions at hand and in the Tobago space, we have what is considered over the years some major divisions, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is agri, and so on. Would one say that this kinds of issues being raised is not far-fetched at all because of the magnitude in terms of the value of work and contracts, etc., that come out of these divisions naturally?
Well, yes. Listen, we are dealing with human beings, and people would do anything. Some people would do anything to get an extra cent. And therefore, that is why you must have checks and balances, okay, in order to counter such measures as people might, you know, such positions as people may take in order to get something under the table, right? So that is why you have, I think the Assembly has a tenders committee, right, okay, to prevent the corruption and the bed rigging, so to speak. You see, because what that does, the bed rigging is a system whereby you have a lot of collusion among the bidders, so that at least one of the partners would have, or, you know, the contract, so to speak, and they share up the spoils. So the Assembly must put in place systems to counter such. I mean, so this thing isn't new. We aren't inventing the wheel. It has been there for the longest while. So therefore, I'm saying that the Assembly ought to put systems in place, and I hope it has systems in place to counter such.
Coming out of the last election period, where there would have been, as you started off by alluding to, very firm objections to what has happened in the past in terms of concerns, similar kinds of concerns expressed in the past. Are you very hopeful today that most certainly those systems or options will be revealed, whether it be by the secretary or the chief secretary himself, because he has certainly taken a firm stance in the past indicating that he does not and will not support any of these kinds of actions within his administration?
Yeah, because one has to remember the last election, THA election, which was won by the PDP then. They came into power on a wave of popularity because of the allegations of corruption of the PNM administration. We could talk about the billion-dollar cultural complex. We can talk about the zip line. We can talk about the crazy and the wanton spending prior to the election, which Tobagonians objected to. So therefore, the Assembly, this present Assembly, ought to have learned from what, the mistakes of the previous administration and have things put in place, proper systems put in place, so that not to fall in those sort of pitfalls, so to speak.
All right, as we look to wrap this morning's interview, in your closing comments, what are you hoping for at the end of today? What do you anticipate at the end of today? Beyond, as you've already mentioned, that you don't expect the motion to be successful. But beyond that, what are your hopes in terms of going forward with the current Tobago House of Assembly?
Well, I hope that the current Assembly, given this motion, they will take note as to what would be said in the Assembly, and certainly try to put in measures so that such motions would not come to the fore again, such allegations would not come to the fore again. In other words, they'll be running a very transparent administration that can stand scrutiny, the scrutiny of anyone. And we also hope that the Auditor General's Department don't have any questions and queries with regard to the expenditure and so on of the Tobago House of Assembly.
All right. Indeed, one of my colleagues would have always said, heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah.
Most definitely. But we are hearing here the perspective of Regis Caruth, former assemblyman, indicating to us that given the circumstances today, in terms of the motion being brought forth, doesn't expect it to go very far, but ultimately, what is expected is that the administration, by way of the secretary responsible, the chief secretary, and by extension, any of the other colleagues, have a responsibility to respond with the facts and to bring the information clearly in order to respond to the concerns that will be raised coming from the minority leader in relation to this motion of no confidence. So we stay tuned and we stay connected later on today as we'll be going live from the Assembly chamber there to carry the sitting that takes place today in terms of this motion being brought forth. So thank you very much, former Assemblyman Regis Caruth.
You're welcome very much, Julian.
On set.
Welcome very much.
All right, viewers, we continue to thank you so much for the continued love and support for the Tobago Updates morning show. This morning, I also want to give a shout out, Officer Sebro out there, traffic and making it happen. I want to say shout outs to Officer Sebro. And as well, not forgetting at all, this gentleman met me on the move and said we are there religiously tuned in. Moses Wrecking Service. They're religiously tuned in and connected to the Tobago Updates morning show. And therefore, we want to thank you so much for the continued love and support and to encourage you to continue to stay tuned. Those of you joining us via TV, those of you listening in on the radio, and those of you connecting with us online, remember to share the live, share the live, share the live.